Thank you.
progressive education in terms of what it is today and what you hope it can be. I'd like to ask all three of you where you see its future. And I'd like to frame it just a little bit. I've heard some good news tonight in the sense that a lot of what you're doing in the classroom is really getting at the things that kids are going to need to be successful adults. That sounds to me like a very promising statement about the future. I've also heard some things and just read some things where I get a little hesitant, where you think about the push towards standardized testing in the public schools that has really continued into this current administration. I think just some of the social tensions that you often face when talking about progressive education in different communities. So there's some good news and there's some tricky news, but I'd like to get the three of you, what's your sense of the future of progressive education?
Well, what came to my mind was it sort of depends what we decide as a nation. Because the future of progressive education is going to be tied and linked to the future of what American education is going to be in public schools and in independent schools. And it's where in the national agenda, how seriously are we going to take the fundamental matters of human development and education in our schools, and where's it going to, and it has a lot to do with funding. We all know that the student-teacher ratio is a very fundamental reality factor. If you're trying to promote the value, each student should be known and appreciated for who he or she is in life, and what are they interested in, and what are those relationships about that can help foster the self-confidence, that can help them make a difference in the world, all that kind of stuff. If you have structures that are underfunded and you have to have too many kids in a classroom with too few adults around, it's a fundamental political issue. So I'd say I'd put it in the context of what's going on in the whole country.
I have two reactions to that, and they are one political and one pedagogical. In the 30s, within the progressive education movement, I've forgotten the fellow's name, but the head of it made a comment at the convention of progressive educators in 1932, I think it was, that we need to go ahead and pursue the project of progressive education into the government. And that was very shocking to people around the educational establishment. And you had the rise of school superintendents who were not really educators, but were more controllers. And all of a sudden, the power of the educational movement was kind of crippled by a subtle political move. And I don't think it was maybe planned out. I think it was sort of a tacit sort of a thing. The other thing in terms of pedagogy that I've done a lot of thinking about and continue, and I don't have an answer, so I apologize. I think the upper end of the school spectrum, high school, needs to move toward a great deal more freedom. I think it's the time that the high school student came to school in the 11th and 12th grade to a desk and to a set of assignments and not to 5 classes with 1 teacher and 20 students. I think we got to move away from that. That's one of my desires. I think we got to go to smaller schools. That's not new. I took that from a great educator who said the country should have no schools that have more than 600 students in them. We got to move towards smaller schools. In the South, we're dominated by football teams. Got to have 3,000 students to get 100 kids out there to play football on Friday night. So that's well, I won't say it. That's a bad idea. We also have to look with the younger students at something we're not doing. And I think it comes out of an understanding of how to get basic skills in their heads by some creative method. I'm intrigued with Montessori. I don't know enough about it, but 2 of my grandchildren went to Montessori schools, and I liked what was happening to them. So I'm intrigued with that. We've got to have strength in that lower school program so when they get to the high school and junior high school, they have something to think about.
I was thinking about Dan's example of the getting a 5 or 4 or 5 on an AP exam versus having your proposal awarded by MIT or some university. And I would wonder how many of you in this room, which of those you would find to be a better demonstration of someone's skill. And I think some of the onus falls on progressive schools to, rather than complaining about the climate of testing, I think we need to be more clear about how we assess student learning and how we demonstrate that. A number of schools in the coalition, and I don't know if you do anything like this at Francis Parker, but have what we call exhibitions. Some schools call them performances of understanding, demonstrations of mastery, but opportunities where students, upon graduating or maybe moving from 8th grade up to 9th grade, have opportunities to demonstrate in a very real, intellectual, interactive way, almost the same as what happens when you are defending your doctoral dissertation. That we have to present some alternative so that parents and policymakers can say, if those are the standards that school is holding my child to, that means more to me than that number on that standardized test. But right now, too few schools, I think, have done that. And I think the future of progressive education lies in our ability to demonstrate to the broader public that what we're doing is not only of equal value, but greater value. And you've got to figure out a way. It's messy, and it's easier, I think, for the public to digest a number than to look at the nuances behind the quality of someone's work. I mean, if I asked you in your line of work, who are the best, most effective people that you work with, a number wouldn't do it. You'd have to describe to me or somehow demonstrate what it is about those two. I don't know what you do. I'll assume lawyer because we're in Washington. But what are those lawyers down the hall, the ones that are most effective? What do they do? Is it the way they interact with clients? Is it the quality of their writing? Is it the quality of their thinking? There's a whole picture. And some schools have moved very far down the path of identifying what those skills are and matching performances to demonstrate them. I think schools like Green Acres and other schools would be served. I'd like to see us move more in that direction too.